So back with side, 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 and side angle, side congruence, we can see in this first pair of triangles that we do have this side is congruent to that side. We have this angle and this angle. We can also see that this side is congruent among those two triangles because it is the same side that they share. And so we can see we have a side, an angle is trapped, and then a side. So side, angle, side. And over here we have a side, an angle that is trapped, and a side. So these triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Moving on to number 2, we can see that we've got this side and this side are congruent. This angle and this angle are congruent. And that this side is congruent. Now, if we look at this top triangle, we do have a side, an angle, and a side. So we do have side, angle, side. But if we look at the bottom triangle, we have a side, and an angle. And that is not side, angle, side. The angle is not trapped between those two sides. So we cannot say that those triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. And yes, I do recognize that if you spell this word backwards, it makes a bad word. Remember, there are no bad words in math. And so since that is not corresponding parts that are the same in those two triangles, we cannot say that those triangles are congruent. So for number 2, we cannot prove these triangles are congruent. So again, for it to be side, angle, side, the angle has to be trapped between the two sides. Number 3, we do have that this side and this side are congruent, this angle and this angle, and both of these triangles share this side. So if I follow through again with side, angle, side, I have side, angle, side in the top triangle. I have side, angle, side in the bottom triangle. So these triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Number 4, we've got this side is congruent to this side, that this side is congruent to this side, and that this angle is congruent to this angle. So looking at the triangle on the left, I have a side, I have an angle, and I have a side. Looking at the triangle on the right, so I've got side, angle, side on the triangle on the left. The triangle on the right, I have a side, and an angle. And so yes, we could write SSA or the bad word. And that does not prove that those two triangles are congruent. Again, for us to use side, angle, side, the angle has to be trapped between the sides, so we cannot prove that these triangles are congruent. They might be, but we can't prove it with the information that we were given. Moving on to number 5, we do have a side here is congruent to this side here is congruent to this side, and this side in the middle is congruent to itself. So we do have 3 sides of each triangle. So again, our side number 1, side number 2, side number 3, and our side number 1, side number 2, side number 3. So we can say that these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Number 6, we've got this side is congruent to this side is congruent to this side, and the side that they share is going to be congruent to itself. So we do have all 3 sides of each triangle being congruent, which is side, side, side. Number 7, side number 1 is congruent to side number 1. Side number 2 is congruent to side number 2. Side number 3 is congruent to side number 3. So all 3 sides of the triangles are congruent to each other. They're corresponding parts. And so we do have side, side, side. Next, we've got a side here, an angle here that's congruent to an angle here. And this line that is shared is congruent among the two triangles, and so we've got a side, an angle, and a side, an angle, and a side. So these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Number 9, we've got a side that's congruent. We have an angle that's congruent here and here. And they do share this side here in the middle. So my gut instinct is to go side, angle, side, but I cannot. Because if I look at this, I do have a side, but I don't have that angle, and I don't have that angle. So I can't do side, angle, side for that triangle. What I can do is angle, side, side. And remember, there are no bad words in math. And similarly, for the other triangle, though, I do have side, angle, side. But there is not enough information to prove that these two triangles are congruent. They might be, but we cannot prove these triangles are congruent. So again, the angle has to be trapped between the two sides. Here, the angle is not trapped. So if it were to be trapped, the correct angle that we would need, I will mark it in yellow here, for us to do side, angle, side. For these two triangles, everyone, we would need this angle here for it to be trapped by this side and this side. And so since we don't have that, we cannot prove that they are congruent. Number 10, I've got a side here, an angle, and an angle, and a side. So I do have side, angle, side for this one because I have an angle trapped by a side, and the corresponding parts are congruent. That's going to be it for the first side. Moving on to the back. We are state what additional information is required in order to know the triangles are congruent for the given reason. And so our first reason is side, angle, side. And what I would need to know in order to prove that these are congruent by side, angle, side, I already know. Let's write in what we know first. We know that this side and this side are congruent. This angle in the middle would be congruent to this angle in the middle because of vertical angles. And so if I have that side, that angle, I would need this side, and I would need this side. So I would need to know that JI is congruent to EI. And we don't know that, so we can't prove these triangles are congruent, but that's what we would need in order to use side, angle, side for number 11. Number 12, we have a side here and a side here. We have a side here and a side here. For us to use side, angle, side, we need an angle trapped between those two sides. And so this angle right here, angle L, is the only angle that is trapped between those two sides of the triangle on the left. And angle H is the only angle that is trapped between those two sides on the triangle on the right. So I would need to know that angle L is congruent to angle H for me to prove that those two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Next, everyone, we can see from the figure that we have this side is congruent to this side. We know that this side XZ is congruent to itself because it is the same side. And what we would need to know is that DX is congruent to ZY for us to use side, side, side for those two triangles. Next, we need side, side, side over here. So we would have these are congruent to these. We need the other side, which is RT is congruent to ZX. Number 15, side, angle, side. So I have a side and an angle, and I have a side and an angle. Remember, the angle has to be trapped between the two sides. So I cannot use that side because that does not trap the angle. I have to use this side because that's the side that traps the angle. Same thing on the other side, everyone, or on the other triangle. I would need to know that WU is congruent to XZ. Number 16, we're looking for side, side, side. We already have this side is congruent to this side. The base is congruent to the base. We would need that GE is congruent to WY. Number 17, we have side angle side that we are wanting to prove. We see that those are congruent. We know that this is congruent to itself. And so the angle that would be trapped by those two pairs of sides would be angle F. Or sorry, I need to name it differently. Angle QFG and angle EFG. So I would need to know that angle QFG is congruent to angle EFG in order to use side angle side for those triangles. Lastly, we're looking for side angle side. I do see that I have vertical angles here, so that's something that we are going to know. I do see that these two sides are congruent. And then lastly, I need the angle to be trapped between two sides. So side angle side says that I would have to have DS is congruent to TS. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope this is helpful, everyone, and I hope you have an awesome day.